Everyone, thanks for joining us today for our Evidence-Based Practice Network. We're focusing on cognitive strategies today. My name is Deanna Parrish, and I'm the Program Director for the Academic Alliance of South Carolina. And I'm excited to introduce our speaker for today, Jennifer Sowers. She is a middle school teacher with the mostest, and we're glad that she's sharing her work with students today and how you can implement these strategies in the classroom. We will be following up with posting a one-pager on cognitive strategies that will be on our website. And at the end, Susan will drop in a link for an evaluation that if you complete, we'll send you automatically a certificate for attendance. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to get started. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about using strategies for cognitive strategies in the classroom. As Dr. Parrish has said, I do teach middle school resource and do tons of co-teaching. So these strategies are great, not just for the students with disabilities, but for all the students in the class. They like to know that I am a dork and will do anything to help them enhance their memory and their skills and learning the content to prepare, not just for the test. I try to explain to them it's not all about the test. It's really about remembering things and learning new skills. Dr. Thomas, are you going to share that? Do you want me to share it?
I'll let you share it. I think you should be able to share as a co-host.
It looks like I can.
Okay, then you can drive it.
You don't want me to drive. I'm not good at driving. Will y'all let me know if you can see that?
We got it.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I did steal this one from Dr. Thomas. I hope she doesn't mind because we used this in a recent training because I did love this one. This picture says it all because it is true that we all use strategies. They're not just for the classroom setting. They're not just for the workplace. They're really for everywhere. I know everyone seems to be muted, but is there anyone out there of our participants that can tell me what strategy might be shown by this picture that is something that is a pretty common one? We'll get some chatting. Oh, Deanna knew. All right, if you said lefty loosey, righty tighty, you were good to go. Those silly things that we use sometimes to remember. I know every time I pick up a tool to have to tighten up a bolt, I have to say that to myself. So again, these are not crutches. These are just helpful techniques that will help us remember things and do better with remembering.
And I'll do it when I get through with this, okay? Because I've got to do this. Thank you. Or do I need to sign it for you to take back? What is that?
This is the bill for Quill, the partial payment.
Okay.
I checked off everything like you said, and I put ready.
Okay. So why strategies? We kind of just talked about some of the basic common sense ones is that we all need strategies to help remember certain things, especially in areas that are not our strengths. I will say that fixing things around my house is not one of my strengths. So whatever strategies I can learn would be helpful. So why do we use them with students? It's because they have trouble remembering things. They have trouble, as to use the fancy jargon, with their executive functioning. So some of them have trouble processing information, definitely problems retaining that information even once they've processed it, and also organizing that material and managing their time to study that material. And so that is why I try to implement cognitive strategies throughout my day with my ELA and my math classes. So we all know that a common practice for kids with disabilities and also all kids would be to do some note taking. These are tools that are going to help us remember. I am a big note taker, list maker. Kids will say, hey, can I do this later? They watch me write it down because I will forget. That's just the reality of the crazy lives that we live. Graphic organizers, we've all used those in some way and form. Mnemonics, of course, and then verbal rehearsal. We're going to talk about each of those separately. So note taking. The thing about note taking is I think especially once you get to the middle and I'm sure high school level, it is assumed that we all know how to take notes. But those of us that are probably teaching kids with disabilities or just teaching kids in general know that they don't just know how to do this. This must be taught. It has to be very strategic. It requires the presenter of the notes to cue what should be written down, when to write it down, where to write it down, to emphasize the main most important parts that the children are going to be required to know. Obviously, that's going to look different for a 6th grader versus an 11th grader. So as we are starting to build these skills, we will fade the different prompting and cueing until they are independent on it. This could take all the way through high school, though, for some kiddos. It does have to be guided. If you're going to do some guided notes, that requires planning ahead of time by the teacher of the content to do those skeleton notes where there's some blanks for them to fill in. So it's not just, you just can't say, write this down. There has to be some thought involved. And some pre-planning. I have added a link at the bottom of the slide, which all this will be shared, where you can get some kind of pre-made type of things. I did want to include a couple examples. So my one example are the Cornell notes. I know at this school where I am, a lot of teachers like to teach these that uses the margin to ask some questions that they're thinking about. It has the different parts where we're going to cut down what we're saying. What do I need to write down? What do I need to repeat? What do I need to reflect on? And then what do I need to review? Those are kind of a little bit fancier. Those are more for lectures, which I think as kids get older and higher level classes, those would become more appropriate. I am a fan here for the notes that I like to give and get my teachers to give to the co-taught kiddos are more like the ones about frogs and toads that live in the desert. So we're first going to have the similarities. They're going to jot down 1 or 2 of those. We're going to talk about the differences. So what's different or special just about the frogs, then what's special just about the toads, and then their survival strategies. Those are skeleton. The kids don't have to do all the writing. They're just going to add in, especially this day and age. I'm sure a lot of you are also using the Chromebooks or some sort of device in a lot of your classes. So the students that may have some OT issues, they could also just type their notes as opposed to handwriting. We know that a lot of our kids do have trouble with their handwriting and also the pace of it and trying to keep up with notes. Are there any questions? I want to pause for a minute and see. And then our favorite, some graphic organizers. They are easy to find, or if you can't find them, just create one. I know with AI, you can just say, hey, AI, how about create me a graphic organizer to use about plot setting or plot in a novel. They can be very broad-based or they can be extremely focused depending on what you're wanting to use it with. My suggestion is to just pick a few and use them consistently as opposed to just having a different one of the week. I know years and years ago, we did all these graphic organizers training and we were using the double bubble and the bubble map and all those things. And they were all great, don't get me wrong. But again, working with kids, depending on their disabilities, fewer choices and fewer options are sometimes better until they get really strong and proficient with them. Then again, you can add in some other types. The one at the top right, the characters and setting, I'm using this one both of my ELA classes, they have to do independent reading. And then in one class, they have to book conference. And in the other class, they have to do quotations and annotations. So I have given them these. I've actually written them on sticky notes. And then I got really smart and learned how to actually photocopy them onto sticky notes. It's a little bit of a chore, but it's easy to do. And so I actually have it laid out where there's a box for them just to jot down the different characters of the story, just a basic synopsis of what the setting is, what was the major conflict or problem, and the major events. And they have these and they use them as a sticky note, as a bookmark. They use the sticky note as their bookmark as they're reading, and then they're filling it in as they go. This also helps support some things we'll talk about in a little bit later, is about that anxiety about having to talk about a book. Because I'm sure I know I sometimes go into a conversation and you ask me a question and my anxiety's up and I have no idea anything of what I've just learned, although I actually do know it. So we allow them to use these during the book conferences. And again, most of them have them out and they never even look at them, but it's like that security blanket that they have it in case they need to reference it. Another very simple one would be the timeline. They would just write the dates and the events if they had to do something. More so, in my mind, this would be great for social studies classes. I'm going to pause and try to give wait time because I'm not always great about that. Any questions or comments? Oh, now we're getting into my jam. Here's my jam right here. So mnemonics. Love me some acronyms. Again, if I were to say PIMDOTs to you guys, I'm sure a lot of you would be able to very quickly say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And if I said, what does that mean? You would be able to tell me that it is parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division as it comes, addition and subtraction as it comes in the number sentence. Or Roy G. Biv for the colors in the spectrum for a science class. Acronyms are great. Those types of mnemonics are very helpful. Again, that's something I live with every day teaching 7th grade math. So that PIMDOS one is a big one. Another way, everyone thinks of those acronyms a lot for mnemonics, but also under that umbrella of mnemonics, we would find just chunking information. That can be numbers. Again, we do that with telephone numbers. We do that with our social security number and things like that. It also can be used, and this is how I utilize it more, with longer lists of information. Students having to memorize all of the helping verbs, students having to memorize all of the prepositions. So those things are a little bit tougher for kids who might have a processing disability or just have trouble remembering things. And again, so that would help with that. Having them break it into smaller pieces, practice it multiple times. The research, it depends what research you use. Typically, it is between 10 and 20 times they would need to practice looking at that information and going over it and reviewing it. And that doesn't mean 10 times in a row. That would be 10 times over at least a 24-hour period, if not several day period, before it's going to leave that short-term memory and enter that long-term memory. But again, that chunking is a great tool that I use often to help the kids remember the information they need, such as those longer lists of information. My favorite, the kids' least favorite, because I can't sing, I shouldn't sing, but I do sing. So anytime I can incorporate music or rhyme or singing and big gestures and being dramatic, I have no problem, no shame. These are 7th graders. I'm not worried about what they really think of me, as long as they're learning. So we are still working on our integer unit that if you're a middle school teacher, I know you love those integers. And so I've been singing the same songs, same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract song that goes to the tune of row, row, row your boat. And the funny thing is the kids will roll their eyes and look at me like, oh my gosh, you're such a dork. But yet during the quiz today, the amount of humming I heard of because again, they had that tune. They knew what to do and they were singing it to themselves or humming it to themselves to help them retrieve that information, which are those steps on what to do when you encounter a adding or subtracting problem that involves integers. So again, There's a lot of different references for that I'm going to get to in a minute. But again, just don't be too proud to embarrass yourself because they're 12 or 17 or whatever. Who cares? To give you a couple examples of things I do for that, I did say the singing, that's super fun. And I just Googled the song for that. And so that link, if you just Google the integer song set to row, row, row your boat, it will come up. I also love to use Kahoot. I was able to talk my administrator into purchasing a license for me. But prior to that, I think it was $30 a year. And I love these, especially for vocabulary like stems and SAT words. And link it with a picture to match the word with the definition, but have that other step in there for them to link it to and remember. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to do a little bit more talking about that. So it pops up. I'm going to put my nickname in. So this is for one of our novels and their the different chapters in the vocabulary that they're going to be required to know. So it has the definition in a boldly resistant or challenging manner, and then they have choices to make. I don't know where my cute picture is though right now. By the way, it's defiantly. I'm wondering if it doesn't show up on this one. I have to move my little participants over. I think it is not showing because this is the homework style one. Give me one quick second and I'm going to fix that and show you what it's like. Please excuse my glitch because we just did this one today. And what I love seeing about it as they have practiced them several times, and then when we get going, there are the different videos or the different pictures, and I noticed that the kids were starting to cover the pictures with their hands, so they no longer needed to rely on the pictures as much. And of course, that's going to make me happy because we know that that's starting to work and starting to show their growth for that. So this is going to take me 1 second. So this is what it looks like when you're playing live in the classroom. The students will enter their game pin and then their name. And we do that together where there is a discussion between each one. Then we will get to the point they can go ahead and work on it independently. I like that portion as well. Okay. So I'm going to play against myself right now. This will show you what it looks like with the photos. I apologize for that mix up. So again, now we finally have it. So an object of search, pursuit, or hunt, or prey. And we've got that poor zebra being chased after, about to be lunch. And of course, we know that that is going to be Corey. And so again, it was really neat to see that as the kids go over these, after we've explained them, after they've had practice, they were literally covering the picture with their hands because they wanted to do it without that extra step, without that extra layer of connection. And so that is a great way to do that. Questions about the Kahoots? Or is there anyone else out there that uses the Kahoots and likes them? See if there's any chatting. Okay. All
I
right.
use it a lot with my kids at home.
Do you at home?
Yeah, they bring them home they go to St. Joe's and they bring home different Kahoots things, and it's fun that we can do it together.
Yes. And so again, anything that has a little bit of that you can gamify, I like that new phrase that you can gamify, definitely ends up being more interesting for the kids rather than just flashcards. I'm a big fan of just the old school flashcards because you can make them into games. But again, with this day and age, it is very easy to have those links for them to use. It was really convenient on our e-learning day that we had on Monday. I'm going to move on to another one, vocabulary. I think probably a lot of you have used it before, but if not, if you haven't used it, you're missing out. And again, since I have been working on multiplying and dividing and actually all operations with integers, they just have some really rather annoying rhymes and hip hop to tie it into if you can't find something else already out there.
All right. Take your seat. Take your seat. Flow cabs in session. We're multiplying integers today with a little twist. But first, let's bring the hook in. Multiplying integers with the same sign. Get a positive product every time. And if the integers are different signs.
I'm not going to torture you with all of that, but again, it has the rhyme. It goes through the different rules. It also has different cards that they can do. They have little quizzes at the end. Again, I know at my school, this has been purchased and is free to all teachers to access through Clever. But again, so there's reviews, there's lyrics, and then they break it down, and then there's a vocabulary game. So you can use these as well. Some of these are a little bit longer, but again, the kids seem to get into them, they enjoy them, and it's something different and fun. And this is more of an old school way. This is more the Quizlet. There is also Quizlet Live you can play with kids. And these were just for my STEMS cards. You can look at them just merely as, you can use them just like flashcards, where they've got the word on one side and the definition on the other. So chlor means green, but in addition to that, you can do games with them. You can do a matching game, you can do a blast, and again, the Quizlet Live we do where the kids will work in groups and try to see who gets done the fastest. Again, it's all about that repetition. It's all about that repeating. It's they're seeing it, they're saying it, and they're actually working with the material. So anything that can help would be amazing in my opinion. What I just said definitely leads into that next part, which is that verbal rehearsal. The problem is kids like to listen to things so much. They've always got their earbuds in or their headphones on. However, we need to make sure that they are also saying it out loud. There is something with the memory connected to when we say something ourselves, we hear ourselves saying it, and then it's going to start becoming part of what we just know how to say. So you have to first explain the rationale why they're doing this, make sure that they have multiple opportunities to repeat it. They have to review it. And again, it just goes back to they have to see it, say it, and hear it all at the same time as much as possible. Any other comments or questions about these fun things? This is my favorite part. I like to, again, to just be the biggest dork ever. So I'm so glad some of my friends are not commenting about me being a dork. For self-regulating, because it's great that we make them do these things, we assign them and everything, but we really do, the main goal is to get kids to figure out what they need, why they need it, and to start doing it themselves. Obviously, a way to do that would be to do some goal setting. This is not necessarily an IEP goal, just a personal goal. So again, I've got some kids trying to work on some behaviors. And so we were working more on tracking, did I raise my hand? Did I listen when the teacher spoke? Did I do these different things? And then they are self-recording and the teachers are also self-recording. And really that's working on them taking some responsibility for their behaviors and what they're doing in the day-to-day. They do need to talk themselves through these tasks. Again, I hope we're doing that all the time. That is part of a cognitive strategy as well, is for them to understand and see other people using these strategies. So I talk, definitely am a talker. They wish I wasn't, but I talk through, why am I doing this? What is my next step? And so doing that, that's the same for behavior and learning how to improve your behavior and stay focused on your goal to either whether it be to earn more points or to get off the point sheet. It depends on what that would be. So with that goal setting and monitoring, again, the kids really need to have some buy-in with that. The bigger the kid, the bigger the goal sometimes, because they're getting close to getting out of our kind of umbrella of support. So we want them to be able to do this as they move into independence. We need to help them get to the goal and pick their goal responsibly. We talked at a recent IEP meeting, as in yesterday, the parent wanted the child to have 100% accuracy, but they were only at 75%. And so talking about what would be more reasonable. And so we finally decided that 90 would be a little bit better of a goal. So sometimes we've got to guide them to that goal. And my comment about that is sometimes when you're doing that, because you may not be agreeing with the parent or with the child, to somebody in that group, you will not be the cute and popular one, but that's not really always the important thing. The last one about the self-talk and the goal setting and monitoring, with our kiddos, a lot of times with using those cognitive strategies, so they've studied and they did really well on the test. They will all say to me, "Oh my gosh, Miss Sowers, thank you so much for making that Kahoot. That's the reason I made the A on the test." And I have to remind them very quickly that the Kahoot is not the reason they made the A on the test. The reason they made the A on the test is because they studied. So really focusing them back to it is what they're doing and their efforts that are why they did well on the test. Conversely, I'm sure none of you have heard a child say to you, "I didn't do well because the test was really hard," or "that teacher is mean and they made the test really hard." As opposed to when you really drill down and have a conversation with the child, you find out that the real reason is they didn't study. So again, just kind of putting it back into what they can do differently to either meet their goal or not meet their goal. Did Deanna or Dr. Thomas, did you want to talk about the other parts of your?
I'm going to ask you one question before we do that.
Okay.
Um,
I love
So-
question and answer time.
I know. Do your kids make up their own mnemonics and do some of their own strategies? Do you ever
They
do
do.
that in class? And
They-
how do you
they-
do that?
Okay,
How do you
so
get them to do it?
we gave them, the funny thing is, what a great question. Thank you to get me to expand on some things. So with the Kahoots and the Quizlets, we were using those a lot. And we found that a lot of the kids wanted to start making their own. And they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, we can do this too." And they can, depending on, they get the free version, especially of Quizlet, and also Blookit are free. And so they can make their own, and they were sharing with the class. And so we did find out, you always find out sometimes the hard way, that they wanted to use the Blookits more so because it's a game first. So they have to get one or two problems correct, and then they earn game time. So they were more doing it to have more time with the game. At the end of the day, you need to make a choice as the educator, as the person in charge, as the parent. In some cases, I did hear a parent on there saying about using the Kahoots. What is more important? Do you care if they have some extra game time, but they're still getting some studying in? So that is just one thing to be wary of or observant of. But I did love when the kids started making their own and they wanted to fight over, or not fight, kind of see who could win the ability to have their game used at the end of the day or at the end of the period. So that was very neat. Also, I have some students that had some pretty significant dyslexia. So they were working with their parent and they were making their own because they wanted the pictures they selected because it really helped their memories. So again, there's ways to expand on this. And actually, again, it's all about, we won't have them forever. We won't have these kiddos forever. We have to instill in them these strategies that they can use for academic and behavioral success throughout their lives, not just while they're with us in the schools.
Thank you.
Pick my brain some more.
Anybody got any other questions? Or want to share a strategy that maybe you've used with students that you found effective? it's Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Everybody's like, no.
Mhm.
Hey, Susan, this is Ginger. I was just going to agree that those technology enhanced type activities are really engaging for our students. They love the Quizlets. They love to play in teams or individuals,
Mhm.
and make it a game for their learning. But those points really drive them for that competition. So
Yes.
and they also like to beat the teacher too. So
Yes, I love that. And I am one of those people. I don't know, people have different schools of thought about this, but I've been doing this for, this is my 31st year. So I am not too, proud to give candy. So like the top 3 people on the podium at the end of the Kahoot will always get, candy. So I wish I could eat it. So.
And I
Perfect.
love that you started off talking about how we use these things every day. It doesn't make them stand out to use that. I religiously use my calendar. I could not live without those reminders to do tasks and complete things and what's coming up next. So just always reiterating back to students that this is part of learning life skills, I think is important with these cognitive strategies, because we do still use those throughout our day as successful adults. And for them to get there, they need to learn how to use them, what they are, and when to use them. And I think that's important with the cognitive strategies piece, not just learning the strategy, but when to apply the strategy.
Yeah, I had a student that just, thank you for that. That's a great reminder as well of another one. And I talked about how they know, like if you're a list maker or whatever. I had a student that transferred in at the beginning of the year, and one of her goals was to basically write down her assignments and kind of chunk it into different increments for studying and preparing during the week. Well, at the end of the day, she did it basically, she would just write down the things, but she wasn't utilizing it. She still wasn't turning the assignments in. So we talked about, well, we need to kind of change up your system. And so I said, like, for me, I write things down and I just get this huge satisfaction when I always, because I write it in ink and then I cross it out with like a pretty marker, and it makes me so happy to cross something off my to-do list. So I gave her a different folder, and it has what she needs to do every night. And then at the very end, I just have a title, like one of the columns just simply says done. And she gets to give herself a check mark at the end of the day. And she looked at me when I was telling her, she's like, that's not going to make a big deal. She came to me the other day and she was like, look, I got all my check marks. So again, it's whatever's going to work for that particular child. Some things will work with a group of kids. Sometimes you really have to fine tune it down to that individual child's needs and requirements. But again, it is instilling in them that these are for life. This is not just for your 7th grade year. These are life skills that we all need, and it is normal to need them, and it is normal to use them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just a reminder that we would love to hear from you and give us some feedback. A couple of things about us is that we will share this presentation with you. If you're not getting our newsletter, you can certainly sign up for it. We promise only to bother you once a month, but it does list all our events. Also, we have a website at academicalliancesc.org, and please check that out. Please do get to the right forms. I put the wrong link in there. I didn't paste correctly. So the last link in there is the one to the evaluation. And we will appreciate it if you will just take a moment and fill that out and give us information. We have a question in there. If you have other things you'd like to see us do during our Evidence-Based Practices Network, we'd love to have it. We would love to have you following us on social media. And so we are on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and we're also on Facebook. And we look forward to seeing you again. Anything else, Dr. Parrish, that you can think of? Or does anybody have any questions?
I can't think of anything else. We are so appreciative to Jennifer for sharing this information with us today.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Of
That
course.
was great.